True.
So the main part of our show is that I start at just some generic random time, because I'm the one with the controls. But this is I could get into this where Leah and I talk about different things that we could get into. And as we've had some interviews in the past, we have another interview tonight. We are going to be interviewing Ian Sutherland to be able to I don't know, Ian, I'll let you introduce yourself. What is it that you do? What are you getting into?
Hello, everybody. I just saluted at the camera and I've realized that people will listen
The
to
only
this.
place we have any allegiance.
Yeah.
That's all right.
For having me. I am indeed Ian Sutherland, and I guess cut right to the chase. I think what initiated this arrangement was me telling Leah about my relatively long-term now interest in making fragrances, colognes, and perfume.
Yeah.
But you are definitely the only person I've ever met that makes their own fragrances and not just like is using that as a euphemism for burping and farting. So like you already had our attention.
Yeah.
That
Like,
goes-
oh no, that is what it is, Leah. Sorry.
I was lying. It's
I would
actually
make a
just
lot of money online.
extremely flatulent. Yep. I don't get paid. I do it for free. Great.
I pay people to smell my farts. So
Yeah, I'm destitute.
goodbye, listeners.
wasn't that something that people were doing for a while there, bottling their farts?
I
And
thought there
selling
was
them?
like one of those like teen moms that was doing that.
Yeah, it was fairly recently.
I feel like it was just one guy buying her farts. I mean, let's be honest. I'm believing there's one guy out there, but there can't be a whole cottage industry.
You know
There
what?
just
Even
can't.
if there's one person though, that's a market.
That's also too many people. I don't want to
Darwin's
keep
gonna
shame,
take
but
care of that
yeah.
person then eventually. Excellent. Well, so Ian, let's talk about this. So and how Leah explained to me was perfumes, which is fine. I'm sure that is, kind of always comes as a misnomer. But I was just thinking about it going, I don't, my wife doesn't wear any perfume. I don't wear cologne. So I was like, this is interesting. To be able to talk about something like this.
Cool.
So how did you get started in it?
Frustration. I'm not a huge
Like all our hobbies.
fragrance wearer myself. Yeah, exactly. I was annoyed with something that happened. I'm not a huge fragrance wearer myself. Well, I do a little dab every now and then of my own stuff, but years ago, gosh, about 2014, there's a cologne that I like a lot that has a really embarrassing name. It's called 212 Sexy Men.
Oh, Sexy Men. Yes.
Yeah,
Sexy
yeah.
Men.
It's
Boiling
Yeah.
points.
Yeah,
This came out in the aughts. Is that
yeah, I think it was released in 2009, I want to say, and it is very like the
Excellent.
bottle design is, yeah. It's a Carolina Herrera fragrance, and it's part of a line. It's a 212 Men line, and there's all these different kind of versions of it. And Sexy is
You've got to do that with like the eyebrow waggle, just like sexy.
Sexy.
Wow, I can't sprain myself.
it's a great fragrance. It's bergamot and vanilla and sandalwood. It's a very kind of creamy and round. And I'll dive into some of this. It's a good like nighttime smell. Like if you're on a date, if you're in formal wear, it's a little subtler. It doesn't really explode off of you.
Yeah.
It sits really nicely. Because it's more delicate, it also works best up close. So if you have, a dance partner or something, or you're, making out with somebody and they're right in the nape of your neck, it's a lot more effective. And I really like earthy and like kind of creamy fragrances. And I went to pick up a bottle of it. I was out and needed to renew my supply. And I went to, a Sephora or something like that, and the person at the counter said that they didn't make it anymore, that it no longer would be in production. And this gets funny in a minute. So I thought, well, that's not fair. So I figured, certainly I can make this. This
Yeah.
can't be that hard. The thing
Kinda
everybody
like me when
thinks
they're
when
like
they're
out of,
about to.
your favorite cookie at the bakery. You're like, well, I'll go make my
Right.
own.
Yeah,
You actually
yeah.
succeeded, whereas I just lit something on
Well,
fire.
sort of. Um, so I started doing some research on, first of all, how to make fragrances. And there are a lot of different kind of ways you can do it. There's like a pretty easy, fun, like hobbyist at home way. And then there is professional, like get a distillery going basically and actually
Oh, wow.
produce oils. And I would eventually end up landing somewhere in the middle, which is what a lot of kind of people who are a little more than hobbyists wind up, because the truly professional stuff is expensive and extremely difficult. You have to have to produce oil. You have to have the means to do that. Like you can get a home still, but it's still they're a couple $1,000s and they take
Yeah.
up a bit of room. And
Mhm.
so anyway, I did some Googling, and the easiest version I could find was get some essential oils and some Everclear. And
Got yourself a party.
exactly, yeah.
More like
making
a
schnapps.
pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny. So I go to a craft store, I forget which specific one, and I go to buy essential oils, and it's me and maybe two sort of pyramid schemey, like multi-level marketing folks who are like restocking their supply of also essential oils. And they're like, why? I don't know anything about that world at the time. Like, what are these weird,
Yeah.
like, bored suburban
Yeah, what are
moms
these,
doing?
what are these white bitches doing over here?
And then a friend of mine made a joke. They were over and they saw I had this like 50 bottles of essential oil. And they were like, oh, are you getting into like aromatherapy scams? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they explained this whole world to me about like, yeah, it's like all of those other weird multi-level marketing scam things where people sell these fragrance oils and it's this aromatherapy kits that you can do. And there is some veracity to aromatherapies.
Oh yeah.
There's some legitimate research to it, but of course, like anything, people. So I was exposed to that, which was weird, but I was like, no, of course not. I just want to learn how to make this cologne that I like a lot. And then, I start my research on trying to figure out what the specific recipe is for 212 Sexy Men. I don't know why I thought this would be really easy to figure out, but of course, professional fragrances, their recipes are relatively secretive.
Sure.
For
Lock and
marketing
key.
purposes,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. For marketing purposes, they'll let you know a couple of the notes, like two top notes, two middle notes, and then maybe the base. But otherwise, and I wouldn't know this at the time, but fragrances, when you produce something that has like a really complex and memorable smell, you're combining 150 different
Oh yeah.
fragrance oils or more into your chemicals. So there's so much that goes into it. I didn't know that. So I said, well, fuck it. I have all of these fragrance oils. I'm just going to try making something with these like basic steps. So I think I did something. I don't remember what the first recipe I ever tried was, but it definitely had like jasmine and musk in it, like stuff that I like, into Everclear.
Yeah, because you need like an alcohol base.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Alcohol kind of preserves it and allows it to be wearable. As
So
alcohol
it kind of evaporates off
evaporates,
the skin.
it flies out. Exactly.
Okay.
And
I
so
work
the
perfume,
initial,
so I get that part kind of.
right, yeah. So the initial one that I made, I mixed it all together in a little like a party cup, like a solo cup, and then covered it with saran wrap, rubber
Don't
band
shoot it,
around
Leah.
No.
No, you're
Leah's
probably
thirsty.
sicker than a dog.
I put it in in the back of my fridge because the instructions that I had found suggested keeping it in a cold, dry, dark place. It's like,
What better
I
spot?
don't have cave access, so a fridge was the best choice. And you age it for kind of as long as you would like. You check it every couple of weeks, and once it gets to a point where you're happy with it, you stop aging it. And I let it sit for 3 or 4 weeks. Smelled it. It smelled horrible. It smelled like I
Did it get rancid?
macerated a bunch of. No, I did a bad job.
Or?
It smelled like
Interesting.
bad, like low shelf flavored vodka. Is all. It smelled like grapefruit vodka from a plastic bottle.
Again,
And so I
you're
thought-
making schnapps.
That actually is my signature perfume. Thank you.
Plastic bottle booze, yeah.
Yep.
Well, so-
And bananas. Just douse it on me.
Yeah, just dunk it in.
Yep.
And so I did a little more research, and I saw a lot of people suggesting like, oh, just keep aging it. The alcohol smell eventually kind of goes away.
Mm.
And so I put it back in the fridge for a few more weeks, and it just got worse and worse. It smelled like what I had initially made did, then lived like a really hard, like saw some things and then died, and nobody knew it died for a while, and it was left to die. And then they found it months after it. It just got worse.
Like
and worse and
anti-perfume.
worse. Exactly. Yeah. It was truly repellent.
Pungent but awful.
So, yeah. So I got rid of that and kind of never revisited for a while. And then I went on a great big westbound adventure from Chicago. I moved out to Vegas and lived in Hermosa Beach for a while, blah, blah, blah. And when I moved back to the city about 2018, the city being Chicago, I was really bored. I didn't have very much going on. I was kind of back after a few years out. And, I just got this wild hair to get back into and try it again. And I think what spurned that was that I had stumbled upon like a professional guide on how an actual perfumier might do this at home still, though. And this egg were like, oh, the essential oils you can get at Hobby Lobby or whatever are not aroma chemicals. They're not isolates of the actual oil that you can press out of organic material. They're blends, they're fake. Even if they have a little bit of, real, say, jasmine in them, they're blended with other stuff to enhance it and make it a little more like immediately palatable. And I discovered that there are essential oils that are real pure oils. There's something called aroma chemicals, which are almost like the molecular breakdown of essential oils that are even more purified. And then you have like accords, which are blends to, let's say you have something that smells like leather, that would be an accord. But you can also have something that smells like lemon or strawberry, that is a blend of different aroma chemicals to create a more like, not necessarily manufactured version of a strawberry smell, but just a more complete. The strawberry, like real strawberry oil, doesn't necessarily smell like oil because you're separating the components of it. The best example I like to give for this is lemon is a really good example, because the rind smells different than the meat, smells different than, I forget what the like white fibrous stuff that runs through a citrus fruit. But all three of those things produce oil, and they all have different sort of citrus notes to them. So if you wanted to create something that smelled like a lemon, you would blend those together until you got something that smelled like what we understand a lemon smells, versus lemon juice or the fat of the rind or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So I figured out this more professional approach to it, and figured out that there is, like, even the alcohol, there's perfumer's alcohol, which is still basically just Everclear, but it's denatured. I've been interested in like dabbing some on my tongue, but it smells so aggressively hard
Like
and
thinner.
bad. Exactly. Yeah. I'm like,
nope.
I don't want to.
Not that desperate or that curious.
Exactly. And so and the coolest thing about this hobby, besides the end result, is that getting started, kind of diving into it, it's not terribly expensive. You can get, there's a website, there's a service called the Perfumer's Apprentice that has pre-made kits where you can kind of pick what kind of fragrances you're interested in, and they'll send you like a starter supply of what you need. And it's not terribly expensive. I want to say, I think my starter kit was like 45, 50 bucks. And they send you little 5 milliliter bottles. And
well, shoot,
those
it's very
bottles
much a bottle of like perfume costs, good perfume.
Exactly. Yeah. And
you could make a bunch and have options.
Right. Yeah, precisely. So I did that. I ordered a little starter kit and then like some extra stuff. And I got myself a bottle of perfumer's alcohol. And you're gonna have to forgive me. It's actually been a minute since I've done this. I'm restocking currently, like kind of restocking my supply. there are alternatives you can use to the alcohol as well. There's plenty of other
Oh, interesting.
options you can get, but perfumer's alcohol is easy to get a hold of, and you don't need a ton of it, especially if you're only making, little 5 to 10 milliliter bottles of the fragrance. It'll last you a really long time. So I ordered these supplies and I started experimenting, and I committed really hard. I made a blend for my mom that featured rose and amber and musk and then a bunch of other stuff in it. But those were the primary elements I wanted to stand out in it. And then I aged it for like a year, not in a refrigerator. I just put it in the back of a closet. That one, actually, the closet behind me here.
The perfumer's
Popped
closet.
it in there. Yes, it smells kind of nice in there still.
does.
Popped that in there for about a year, and then would check it every once in a while, and it was like, oh, it's actually kind of nice. And then within about a year's time, it smelled exactly like I kind of hoped it would. And I gifted it to my mom, and then I kind of ran from there and made some for friends and kept it going. And I was kind of getting ready to soft launch like a small, I wouldn't want to say brand, but like make it so you could buy them from me. Like you
Little
could commission a fragrance
boutique
or
business,
buy.
kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And then I ran out of supplies, and life happens, and I just got swept up in other stuff. And I thought, well, I will restock in time, and then you do the thing. So you're catching me at a good time, because I just ordered today
Nice.
a restock of kind of the basic fragrance, the oils that I like to work with, the aroma chemicals that I like. And that's kind of the whole arc of beginning to now, how I got into it. And yeah.
So what are your favorite scents? Like, what are your favorite oils to work with?
I like Egyptian musk a lot. It's a little different than white musk. It's a little, I've never really looked into this. I wonder if it's called Egyptian musk because it is something that is actually from the region, or if some asshole in 1850 thought like, well, it smells a little spicier than regular musk. Let's call it Egyptian.
We need a more exotic name. Egypt.
It's not Spanish musk yet, but maybe Egyptian musk.
Yeah, you never know sometimes.
It's a little spicier than your like a regular white musk or a normal musk, just musk. It's a little greener. It has a little bit more of an earthiness to it, and I like it a lot just on its own. It's a really nice, especially for me, and everybody has its own smell. And Egyptian musk kind of blends with mine nicely, which is maybe an odd thing to think about, but it is something to think about when you're making perfume selections, or when you're making them for people. Like when I know someone well and I'm making one for them, it is an odd thing, but you do have to kind of consider how they smell if you're making something custom for somebody. Like, how is this going to interact with, I made one for a friend of mine who is an aerialist and a circus performer, and I wanted something that would project off of them while they were performing. Like, okay, how do I do that? So you have to feel like a creep and think about how your friends smell all the time.
I just always think it's weird, like how different people's body chemistry can interact with the perfumes. You have two people that have the same perfume and they smell different.
They work differently.
Different people. It's very cool.
Yeah, exactly. So circling back, yes, Egyptian musk is probably my favorite personal kind of fragrance. I really like Oud, OUD, which comes from bark. It's a plant material that is, don't remember where it's indigenous to, but it smells lovely. It's similar almost to like amber or not vetiver, but it has that same kind of sweet, deserty, rocky, earthy smell. It's expensive though, so I don't get to use it a lot. There's a place in Chicago that it's a little boutique where you can go in and make your own fragrances. And I got very lucky. I don't know if he's the owner or something, but I popped in one day because you can buy amounts of aroma chemicals from him, and I convinced him to sell me like a pretty large, like a 12 or 15 milliliter bottle of oud oil for relatively cheap. And so I was really excited. I was stoked to have that, but I tore through it. I was putting in everything I was experimenting with at the time. Those are really nice. And then the name, it's one of the citrus, citral, Citral. I forget which component of a lemon it comes from, but it, to me, almost smells like if you had like lemon and like sugar cookie kind of sitting together.
And like
There's this
sweet acidic kind
sweet,
of smell.
yeah. There's this sweet kind of roundness to it
Makes
that
me think
just,
of lemon bars almost.
yeah, like a lemon bar. It has that
Fresh
kind of
lemon
like
bar.
fresh baked feel to it.
Mm.
Although I've had other
I'm
people
hungry.
have like smelled it and thought it smelled like floor cleaner. So
I
in
suppose
that realm,
lemon, it's kind of hard to disassociate that.
right? Yeah, exactly. Those are probably my main favorites. I'm more always surprised by stuff that I don't like.
Mm.
I've discovered that pure peony oil
Mm.
is a weird experience. It smells like pee to me.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it has this very, and it,
Like a urine smell.
yeah. And so I did some Googling, and it's similar. Apparently, peony, jasmine, rose. There's a couple other of those beautiful blooming flowers that have a similar thing with like how cilantro tastes like soap to some people.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's a term for it. Apparently, some folks have where certain flowers will just smell like urine to them. But for me, it's only
Must be
peony, really.
peonies, huh?
Yeah,
Beautiful
yeah,
flowers,
peony.
but
They are. They're
weird.
gorgeous. They're one of my faves. But yeah, the smell, and it's only like if I smell them in nature, it doesn't bother me. But the
It's just that.
distillate, the oil
Mhm.
is so
The pure
impactful.
smell from it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm also, while we're on the topic, I'm a big fan of less natural smell. Coffee is natural, though, the way we associate it. Like, you don't really smell fresh coffee just out in the world, but the smell of
Yeah.
coffee. I like paper a lot, like pulp. The actual
Oh,
pulp of
yeah.
paper is really nice. Tobacco, of course, kind of a classic masculine smell, but it is, even the plant, the tobacco leaf is a really pleasant smell. Gasoline is another favorite of mine, and
Interesting.
mildew is probably the weirdest one.
That is a
But
weird
I
one.
like the musty basement smell.
Mm.
I think
I-
it's a nostalgic thing for
Yeah.
me. I've never like been able to recreate it, but I've been really interested in like how can I incorporate that into a fragrance in some way.
I was just gonna say, like on the same. I'm like, I don't know about the mold smell, but like that earthy smell, the smell of like dirt. And like I don't
Yeah,
like that really fresh, cold smell of dirt. And I'm like, I don't know why
Right,
I really enjoy that. It's kind of like it's almost like I can't remember the name. Nerds can like chime in and tell me the smell of rain.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
there's a
Isn't
certain
that
chemical that's
petrichor?
released in the soil, and I'm like, whatever that is, I know there's a name for it. Like I said, look it up, nerds. But like that's just instantly just calming. And I don't know how. I'm sure if they could bottle that and inject it into our bodies, they would. But it's a
Yeah,
tough
it's
one to kind of nail down why that's such a good scent. I'm not a
and
farm kid. I didn't grow up in the dirt, so
it's
I
an
don't know where the
interesting
connection
thing,
is.
like why that smell is special to you, and why for me, like musty old basement smell is special to me. So much of it is attached to memory. Even if you didn't have, I don't have a specific like important musty old basement in my life, like I don't
Your
associate that with like,
musty basement past life coming through.
right, yeah, exactly, or it was a mason or something. But a lot of the reasons that we gravitate towards smells, and people, we know this, but smell is really strongly linked to memory. And so petrichor is the word for the smell. I think it might actually be the name of the kind of chemical that's released when you have that first rain after like a warm streak or something, or the smell of rain that hits the dirt like in a summer, Midwestern summer day, and you get that sun shower. It's petrichor, and that is often described as being like a nostalgic smell for people, even folks that like, I grew up in the city, but same thing, like that, just hard to describe smell of, yeah, rain on pavement, rain on dirt, rain on hot grass, really does activate like a deeply comforting and like reassured feeling in me too.
So as you're talking about this, and you guys are both uh talking about your favorite smells that kind of gone nostalgic, I can imagine in my head right now the smell of, for me, going back to nostalgia, is playing on my Nintendo and having the smell of the controller after playing
Yeah.
it for an hour on how it smells on the hands.
Warm plastic.
Having that plastic, kind
Yeah.
of going into the hands, and I can smell it. I mean, right now, I just thinking about it, it's like, I haven't thought about that smell and how that smell has affected me or would affect me over years. But yeah, that's one of them that for myself that I'd say that is definitely a weird smell when you think about it, but it could definitely bring me back because I played the hell out of Nintendo,
Yeah, absolutely.
growing up.
I was just telling a friend recently the something I experienced the smell of new electronics for the first time in a long time. I feel like
Yeah,
we
sure.
don't get that very much. And I popped open a box and you got that smell of like, oh, you just open up the new TV or the new, the Nintendo box or whatever. And like, there it is, that weird, only if you've smelled that smell would you, it's impossible to describe. And they were like, what are you talking about? And it's like, lean in, smell it. And they got it. And like, how have I
A
never
little bit of
noticed?
silicone and a little bit of electronic.
Yeah. Just the like, there's still some solder smell left in
Right.
there. Like, it's just such a good smell, and it's in the same kind of realm as the smell of a warm controller with like your sweat kind of sitting in there. Absolutely, that's
Right.
a strong one.
So one of the things that I'm curious about is as someone wants to get involved and start to do this themselves, how do they get involved to find these different smells? I mean, it sounds like you have a place in Chicago that you were able to kind of find and experience a little bit of that. Is there any other things
Absolutely,
or?
so that website, Perfumer's Apprentice, is my go-to as well, and they have everything from like little guides on how to get started to like notebooks that you can keep your recipes in, to the tools you might be interested in using. You can get huge supplies of plastic droppers and little amber glass bottles if you want, all sorts of other fun ways to transport and carry your fragrances. But they also have everything, all of the supplies that you would need to produce them as well, from like more beginner level things like essential oils and accords to actual pure aroma chemical, which again is usually stronger, more distilled, more expensive, and less like we were talking about. Apple is an accord. Aroma chemicals are going to be the different components of an apple, and you could blend those. But aroma chemicals, they're generally more expensive. They're a little more for like a refined palette, but they have the full range, everything that you can need from starting to experiment to like full on mastery. The only thing I don't think they carry is the tools to produce your own oils, but you could, even if you got to that point, you could go to Harry.
So do they have anything where you can go and you can order a thing of magazines? When back in the day you had the open up magazine to smell the cologne,
samples.
To see what the different essential oils are.
I used to love that. You'd be like, rub it on, be like, ooh.
We'll see how this goes.
I still like, if I see one when I'm like, if I go to visit my mom or something and she'll have like her women's world and I'm like, oh, what's the new Hugo Boss fragrance? Like, let's put it on. But then I feel like a maniac rubbing a magazine on my chest.
I was gonna say, if you're rubbing like paper on yourself.
Yeah. They do have, you can just buy small, the little like 5 milliliter bottles. They're cheap. They're $5-10 a pop. You can get a couple of them. And the way that you can do tester strips, if you just want to make your own, let's talk about the process a little bit. So
sure,
when I am making a fragrance, when I want to create a final product, you can get them pre-cut, these little tester strips, but it's just like blotter paper, or even index card material would work. So I just cut strips of index cards, and then you did just gently a little bit of that index card into your fragrance, just each component of it. So let's say I wanted to make something that was bergamot, amber, and black pepper. Dip a strip into each bottle and then let that dry. Don't overdo it, and you don't want to like globbing off, but just let those dry. It takes a second, and then you can kind of start to waft those, and you can see, you get a general idea of what a finished fragrance is going to smell like. And if you really wanted to, you could, once those are dry, you could kind of see how they smell on you, how they project off of you, and then get to work on actually blending and processing them, which is just meticulous, one drop at a time, and you count the drops. Weight also is going to help you. You get a little scale, little digital scale or something is pretty essential for it, so you can know exactly like what your ratios are for each component. So you mark out your weights, and it's way easier than counting the drops. I tried just counting drops when I was first starting, and of course, when you're putting 85 drops of one component and 125 drops of another, and you're doing that for 40 components, it's really easy to lose track, and it's really easy to fill up space in your notebook or whatever. So just marking the weight changes is way easier.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's how you get started. That's effectively the process. You add however much alcohol you're going to add. There's all sorts of like weird little tricks. There are certain oils that are really effective. Say, for example, they don't really smell like much, but they will preserve or help project your fragrance. Like we talked a bit about this, Leah. A lot of people have heard the term ambergris. Ambergris is not terribly common in use anymore. It's outlawed in some countries. You can buy stuff with it in it, but you can't produce it here, for example, in the States. But ambergris is whale puke, basically. And it was used pretty commonly in fragrances for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it does have a fragrance that is not unpleasant. It's similar to, again, amber, but it's more effective as almost like a preservative. It allows fragrances to last quite a bit longer than they would if they didn't have some kind of preservative chemical. And alcohol obviously helps, but you can add other elements. And there's tons of different options besides just trying to get pure ambergris. There are synthetic versions of it. There are other oils that have similar effect. So you pick up these little tricks, but truly the way to start, I would say, is just, what do you like to smell in your day-to-day life? Get those as oils and train your nose.
Mixing it up, huh?
Yeah, and that's nose training is the whole thing.
That was going to be my next question. Is that
I have a very sensitive nose. Like somebody opens like something across the room, I'm like, oh God, somebody eating something with garlic, and they're just like, how did you know?
That's incredible. Yeah,
it's a curse. I've always heard women have stronger noses than men. I don't know why. Maybe it's a superpower, but it's a curse.
My wife is the same way. Actually, it was funny. My wife, she has this weird sense where she can smell when a certain type of a worm or a caterpillar is in the garden. And so she can always tell. And it's I can't remember what kind.
Superpowers.
Yeah, well, she said her dad used to have the same one. She just, come to the area, and it was just like a really pungent smell to her. And she goes, "All right, we're gonna have to look for some of these." And I can't remember what kind of worms they are, but they're ones that are nasty to the crops. And so it's like, all right, we have to look around. And then, sure enough, you find one or two in that area, and you go and you squish it, throw it off, or whatever. But it's just a weird thing.
Wow. Yeah, I don't have a terribly sensitive sense of smell, incidentally, but I do have a pretty refined one. I can't smell. There are certain things that I can pick up from a mile away, like wet concrete is one that I could always like. Oh, there's fresh concrete somewhere around here.
That's an interesting one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm directly across the street from a fire station, so every once in a while it picks up.
No,
but I do have. I can tell you the difference between like the parts of a different fruit. Like if you presented me, like if you skinned a grape and laid the skin, the flesh, and the seed and the stem out, I could tell you like which was each without looking. And that's directly from training myself to fragrances, different components, and
that's cool.
Different elements that you might put into a fragrance. And the way to do that is to literally just sit and smell the shit out of stuff, but you don't want to really breathe in too deeply, because there are some that you'll get kind of dizzy, or you can just fuck up your olfactory glands. You can do some actual damage. So just gentle wafts, and then anybody's ever been to a cosmetic store knows the way to reset is a really easy way to do it is to smell some coffee beans. Just give yourself a whiff and chill for a minute. The weirdest thing is olfactory fatigue. I didn't know that was possible.
Oh, anything get tired.
Exactly, yeah. So you're sitting smelling stuff for an hour, and suddenly you just can't smell anything anymore.
Your body's like,
that's enough, buddy. Like that's enough smelling rare exotic wood oil for the
does this
night.
like translate it to like your palate? Like, do you feel like you can taste things more acutely now because you've trained your smell to kind of interact with that?
Yeah, I can sit. Especially, I'm a huge coffee drinker. I'm a big coffee snob, and it's really fun to be able to like actually be able to see if the notes that if you're buying a specialty coffee and they say like, oh, with notes of dark chocolate and pluot and all of these, and you sit like, nah, man, this just tastes like mud. Like, versus being able to sit and actually like, I see what you're saying. Like, there is some red wine, there is some stone fruit. That's really fun. Or being able to just sit down with like a spicy, not spicy in terms of like heat, but a dinner that has a lot of flavor to it. And being able to like, I see what you did here. Like I can try to go. I'm a mid-tier cook though, so I don't get too cocky with it. But trying to recreate recipes has been a little more interesting now that my palate is a little more like I can have like my Sherlock Holmes moment where I like see all of them, you know.
I was saying, I see the matrix of the flavor signature. And...
Yeah. I go catatonic, my eyes roll back.
Please tell me you're gonna write a screenplay about this. You can call it the sensist or the olfactorious.
The olfactorious.
I don't know.
The guy with cool smell tricks.
Oh, that's a perfect title.
I love it.
Thank you.
You know, because I was researching, there's really only one movie I can think of that is about perfume, and it's called Perfume. It's actually an excellent film.
It is.
I really enjoy it. I don't think its Rotten Tomatoes score is reflective of how good it is, but it's got Alan Rickman and Dustin Hoffman in it. It's great. But that's why I was just like, oh, murdered anybody to make perfume? Just spoiler alert.
Well, the way that you're explaining the perfume and how you can, and it's helped with your palate, you know, it reminded me of Ratatouille, where you have the mouse that ends up having, and they have all these different things and shows and explaining it. And it's like, you know, that's probably what kind of how you can visualize all of that. So that's really cool.
It is. It's fun to be able to sit. My old cabinet at my old apartment I had this built-in cabinet in the apartment. It's beautiful. I'm a sucker for built-ins. And this cabinet is where I kept all of my supplies. And at this point, you know, it took me about a year or so, but I had amassed 150, 200 different fragrance oils and aroma chemicals and good 60 or 70 experiments and little test recipes that I was running. And so when you'd open this cabinet, it would just be this overwhelming blast of smell, all these different smells, and they blended together to create. And I would sometimes think about like, what if I did a drop of everything into a bottle, including the fragrances I have baking right now, like the ones that are cooking currently, into a bottle to see if I could bottle this smell. And the only way I can think to describe it is, you know, you freshly stain wood, and then it sits outside for a while. Okay. It's similar to that, but without the like chemical notes on the top. It didn't have any of that like weird kind of not pungent, but the painty. Yeah, it was just the clean smell underneath was there, but it was very reminiscent to me of like freshly stained wood. And I would stand in front of this cabinet for a while and like just sit there and like see if I could spot like, all right, there's the grapefruit. And like, there's the smoke, and there's the vanilla, and there's sugar. Like, try to see if I could find where the bottles were in the arrangement. And like, rarely ever could I actually get to a physical location, but I could kind of single out like the smells themselves, and like, right, yeah, that's I do great. Own that.
Wow. I always envy people that could do stuff like that, especially when it comes down to like drinking different beers or bourbon, whiskey, those types of ones. Just you will be able to just enjoy that flavor. I mean, at that point, it's not about Yeah. It's not about drinking that alcohol to get drunk. It's about
Right.
enjoying what that is. I mean, you just need to have a glass of it or of a can of it. And that's all you need in order to be able to really appreciate all that's in there, But
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, and just the
exactly. Yeah.
craftsmanship that goes into, like,
Yeah.
thinking about all those different notes and how they hit, your sense of smell and your taste and everything.
Mhm.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has like, I'm not a huge drinker, but I like a drink every once in a while. I've got a still unopened bottle of Writer's Tears waiting to get cracked
Gotta have 'em on
into
hand.
eventually. Exactly. It's ready to go. And I
Practically
do like,
science. Mhm.
I love to be able to sit down with like a decent or good scotch, rye, beer, whatever, and actually like let it kind of sit for a minute and let my palate explore it and like, oh right, you know how to do this. Like you can find what maybe they were going for and like discover
Mhm.
it's a bit more of an exploration. Meanwhile, I also still love to just like crush a can of old style as often as I
Well,
Yeah, I mean, you're just like, I just need a hams because
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
I feel
It
that.
doesn't, the best part is it doesn't hinder the experience of
Mm.
drinking the cheap easy stuff. Or like I still love Dunkin' Donuts coffee, even though it's got
You gotta live your life.
$175 worth of fancy coffee. Like yeah, it hasn't ruined my ability to appreciate the less refined stuff as well.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people end up losing that.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I never, I
Or
didn't
just
grow up with
becoming
it.
insufferable jerks. Because I don't know about you, but
Right.
anyone I know who's been like training their palate for wine drinking has just suddenly become impossible to be around.
Whew,
Yeah,
yeah.
we get it, Janet. You took that whole class and we don't care. It's red
Yeah,
table wine. Don't tell us about
it's
the
red
notes
table
of
wine.
chocolate.
Right, exactly. Do that at home.
Yeah.
There is, I know a fella who is he's a big wearer of fragrances,
Yeah.
and I don't see him too much anymore. But for a while, when I let slip that I made them,
Hmm.
and that's all he would want to sit down and like, did you smell the new Tom Ford? And like, no, dude, I don't have money. Like, I don't have time to go to the mall and sample the new Tom Ford. And he's like, you gotta go and smell all these different designers and all
Perfume
these
heads,
boutique
these guys that
brands.
just
And
get real deep into just checking out the latest scents. They're just like,
there really is. There's a
I mean, I
subscription. There are
think
like
people get
different
into everything. So
subscription.
I
Yeah.
believe that there are guys that are like men and women that are just obsessed with perfumes. I
Yes.
know of a lot of women that they'll have like years of bottles. They'll get, whatever their scent is or their group of scents. And like anytime there's a limited edition bottle, they'll just go buy it.
Uh-oh.
It's like, oh, I've got to have all of these Chanel No. 5 bottles. Like, that's like 10 years worth of, like 10 lifetimes of perfume.
Yeah.
The really
Well, and
high-end stuff lasts
they
you forever.
they go rancid. That's the
Ugh.
trickiest
So-
thing is like perfume.
Do you just
Yes.
keep it so it looks cool? I'm always thinking of the Avon like weird bottle like shaped things that we see at thrift shops. I'm like, dude, no.
Right. Yeah. No,
Those
they
are
do
probably
though.
mostly alcohol anyway.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Primarily alcohol, but fragrances do go rancid. The
I
presence
believe
of
that.
alcohol doesn't negate the fact that most of it is
It's gonna
organic
break
material.
down and
Exactly. Yeah. For the listeners at home, if you're worried that your fragrances have gone rancid, there are a couple of ways that you can tell. Some obvious ones: if it's gotten cloudy, you can see particulates start to build up, and it varies from like brand to brand, recipe to recipe. But I've seen some of my own that have started to turn. It's almost like when you have like oil separating from water, you get this layer of like gunk on the top. Like those are relatively obvious ones. The more subtle ones, when it starts to turn a bit, stuff like you'll notice the viscosity start to change. And if you don't have it in like a fixed top spray bottle, if you have a dab bottle, or even if you just spray a little so it accumulates in your hand when you get like a new fragrance, like if you're a weirdo like me, spend a minute and like pay attention to how it feels on your skin, because then you can start to notice like, oh, this is getting weird. It's a little slimier than it should be. It's a little like liquor than it should be. Different brands will also, or different, not even necessarily brands, but specific fragrances will last different amounts of time. But a good window is like 2 to 5 years for like a higher end, and then lower end stuff like, things you can get without having someone get it for you at the Walgreens a couple of months to a year, really, before it'll very obviously go bad. Obviously, the biggest giveaway is the smell itself will turn. But I do see, you see occasionally people who are like, I've kept this bottle of Chanel number 5 is a big one that people will hold on to for 20 years. Like, that's been poison for 15 years. Like, it's just weird smelling now. Like, it's not, the bottle might still have some value. You could kill a guy with it, but it's not gonna, you shouldn't wear it
Probably
anymore.
shouldn't put it on your skin.
It's
Right.
basically
Like, for the
Sex
most part.
Panther. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
99%. I can't remember the percentages.
65% of the time, it works 100% of the
100% of the
time.
Perfect. Yeah, and mostly, like, worst that'll happen if you wear turned fragrance is, at the worst, you'll get like a little rash or something, or it'll just like smell bad on you. But there are, like, there are some combinations that, if they sit together for too long, can be quite irritating. Can really bother the skin a lot. Obviously, pepper oils interacting with other, like, mint or anything that also has like zest to it can become pretty stringent and pretty unpleasant on your skin, even fresh. But after they've been sitting for a while, it can get really bad. Just long-lasting, painful rashes. So careful with your fragrances up there, folks. Don't drink them.
I say, I don't think that ever lasts very long, but kind of depends on the size of bottle you get and the concentration and stuff.
Right, exactly. The quality and everything. Is it a true pure parfum? Is it an eau de toilette? Those will also determine how long they're going to last on your body, how long they're going to last in the bottle, how well they're going to project off of you. Another little bit of advice for fragrance wear is there's a lot of different talk about the ideal places to put them on.
Oh yes, I was gonna say, I've always heard the wrists and
wrists, behind the ears, nape of the neck, your chest. The scientific answer is anywhere where the pulse is closer to the skin, because you give out a little more heat, or anywhere that heat kind of accumulates naturally. So your torso is a good spot. Your underarms, like nape of the neck, is usually warm. Truthfully, I think the actual best answer to where you should put your fragrance is situational. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish with it. So going back to 212 Sexy Men, when I would put that on, it was almost exclusively if I was like going on a date, or going somewhere where it's going to be a crowded formal event where people are going to be close. So I would put it like behind my ears, nape of the neck. I would put it one shoulder for like the hug, if people were leaning in for a hug.
Sure.
And then around my forearms, like maybe a tiny spray on my wrists for if I have my arm around somebody, or whatever reason that if you're reciprocating the hug and your arms are up here. Strategically, though, if you're going to work, it's probably a good idea to just like 1 or 2 sprays or dabs just kind of right around your chest so it projects a little bit. You don't really need to do much more than that, because at most, hopefully, nobody's getting any closer than just hello at work. So you can also apply it to, if you're wearing like a coat and you don't necessarily want to have it on you all day, put it on your coat. I like to put some underneath. If I wear a lot of coats with like collars on them, so I'll flip the collar up and kind of just like a quick dab on either side of the flipped collar and turn it back down. It's subtle, but it's there.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I always like to put them on scarves if I'm wearing scarves. Mostly because I'm gonna wrap up in it. It smells nice.
Exactly.
So that's always good.
It's there for you. Yeah. But definitely, I think situational is the best way to think about where you should spray or apply your fragrance, as opposed to trying to find the best projection for it. The body is an
don't bathe in it, don't marinate in it, because there's
Right,
nothing worse than somebody that wears way too much perfume. No one should be able to smell it coming.
Yeah, right.
I can just think about that patchouli smell that you always smell. It's coming from certain people.
You have to compensate for the lack of hygiene.
Well, and usually, as you get older, you don't smell as strong. It's always like, visit my grandmother, and bless her heart, but woo,
Yeah.
to put a lot on. But
Right. Yeah. Well, if you can't smell it yourself either, like
yeah,
me
Oh,
not
just
having a
putting it
terribly
on.
sensitive sense of smell. Yeah, exactly. I have to be careful with how much I'm putting on because
Mhm.
my sense of smell isn't the most sensitive thing in the world. So like, oh shit, like that's 15 dabs. Like I've used half a bottle and I need to shower and change now. So be careful. Be careful, kids.
Right.
Don't love it too
Let it
much.
rest before you put more on. That's probably a good
Yes, agree.
policy because once it fully dries, and then you can kind of get a better idea of just how strong it is.
Yeah. Yep.
I have to admit, guys, I never thought that I would think so much about perfumes and colognes than I am right now.
Well,
And
I
I'm
mean,
just
as
completely,
somebody who doesn't wear perfumes, I guess this is just like eye-opening, isn't it?
I'm questioning all my life choices right now.
Do you
Well,
know what musk
and-
comes from?
No,
Oh, buddy.
oh boy,
no.
I like to
Well,
wear white
I
musk,
mean,
but
the
I get the
musk of like a
ethically sourced,
person. I mean,
artificial.
is that if that's what you're
Yeah.
talking about, like a natural
No,
musk?
like
I understand that,
sure.
but yeah.
Yeah. It's the source of the actual fragrance is similar in some ways to where a person's natural musk comes from. Different animals. If I remember correctly, I want to say beavers are the
Yeah, I
source
think it's
of
beavers
classic
or
musk.
and sometimes mink are
Mink,
popular
yeah,
sources
mink.
for musk.
Yeah, it's a gland that
What about a
is
muskrat?
harvested.
Ew.
Sorry,
They
I had
do
to go
smell
there.
musky, but it's a different kind of musk. But yeah, they have a smell that, incidentally, some people do find it pleasant. So there's a market. One person is a market, right?
Yeah,
Look at all these
absolutely.
callbacks. We're hitting all these. We're hitting all these callbacks. This is great.
You know how to do this.
Not my first rodeo. Well, I think one of the cool things about like wearing perfume and just like having a scent is how you can tap into like memories. I think everyone
Right. Yeah.
knows like what the smells are for things like um like your grandma or
Right. Yeah.
maybe a first boyfriend or something. I actually have a little perfume bottle from Red Thunder that she gave me a long time ago.
Oh,
She
wow.
passed away in November, and so it's always kind of like getting a hug from Red Thunder when I can open this back up and be like, "Aw," like
Yeah.
it's a little thing, but it's a neat like way to connect with people.
Well,
Yeah.
and as I was growing up, I had a lot of friends, especially I had women friends that would say, they always loved the way I smelled. And and I always thought was, oh yeah, I just got a natural, good smelling scent. Well, later on in life, I talked to those friends and I mentioned it, and they're like, well, it really what it was is that we liked your mom's laundry detergent.
That's a big one,
Yep.
though. I mean, like you said, it's all the things that combine to make your scent, and it may not be perfume. It might be the laundry detergent, your deodorant, your
Right.
shampoo.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it's kind of
Well-
crazy, the weird cocktail that makes your unique scent.
Absolutely. Well, and then I also grew up working in a Dairy Queen a lot. So my parents owned a Dairy Queen, so I spent a lot of time in the
Like a
back,
dip
a lot of
cone?
time with the fries and everything. So
Oh,
yeah,
sure. Yeah. Oh,
certain people would say, oh, they didn't like the smell because it always would. If I'd come from work, I'd smell like fries and like that. But then there are the other people that I think it just kind of baked into me for a while, and that's along with other things, I don't know. And I could get away with it until I got married, and then all of a sudden everyone, it didn't really matter anymore.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So you can feel sorry for Donna. She has to put up with it now, but
She doesn't mind too much.
no, she's still around. So
That's good.
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, anything else that you'd like to share with us, Ian? I mean, I don't have any other questions. This is again, this is just all mind-blowing for me. I mean, and not only the process, but you going into where to put it and how to think about it, and it really just completely floored, honestly, about for myself. So
Sure.
Going perfume shopping
not too much.
tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. Truly. Everybody should explore it a little bit. I would encourage folks to dig into. I wish I didn't prepare like a list of recommendations, unfortunately, but dig into like boutique stuff. There's a lot of small, like independent perfumers out in the world that are making really interesting, beautiful, elegant, unique experimental stuff that is going to usually be cheaper and of a higher quality than even like what you perceive to be the highest quality perfumes. You can get a lot of mass market stuff. A lot of the big brand names are, you know, they're made in houses, they're made kind of for the mass market. And even if they smell fantastic, you can almost certainly find something more unique, more individualized, and you're probably going to be supporting like a small, often local producer that is going to be delighted that you're purchasing something from them, as opposed to like, you know, DKNY has enough money, it's fine.
Yeah.
They don't, but you know, I'm not here to, you know, my very first favorite cologne was it's a big international brand. Like there are, you know, there's a reason that a lot of those ones stick and become super popular. There's a reason Burberry Sport is, you know, beloved. It's a great smell and it's worth it. But if you're interested in exploring the world, I would definitely dig in on some of the boutique and like small batch and independent perfumers out there that are making cool, weird stuff. I used to have, I'm gonna kick myself because I can't remember the name of the person that made it, but I had a fragrance that smelled truly just like an old book. Like you had the leather and you had the pages and you had the dust, and it smelled authentically like an old book. And you really can't find that too often with the big houses, with the big brands, with the companies that are producing them. You have to go to the smaller independent perfumers and, you know, people making stuff in their bedrooms.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Ian, tell me, are you what does the future hold for you? I mean, you mentioned that you're getting some new supplies and you were thinking about doing something to have it go to market. I mean, I know it's not going to be a mass produced thing, but you know, is that something that eventually our listeners could get a hold of you and get a
for sure. I don't, you know, I've never been a huge proponent of like, this is going to be my business, but I do love, I'm a tinkerer, I'm a hobbyist in a lot of other ways. If you were to zoom in on this closet behind me, there's 75
the guitar,
different,
the camera equipment,
the guitar, camera gear,
so
there's
much stuff.
yeah. Some weird, I love hobbies and having things to keep myself occupied, but I really loved and still love the art and science of fragrance making, and I certainly will be producing some stuff this year, ideally. They take a long time to age, so bear that in mind. Most of my recipes were at least a 6-month aging process, but I do have, it's called For Your Flesh. We have an Instagram. It's not updated very often, but it's there. And of course, you know, people can say hello to me I'm only on Twitter and Instagram. I don't have any other social media.
What's your handle on Twitter?
It is my name, but wrong. So it's IN_Sutherland. So it's all SITHIRLIND.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
But I'm sure if you just search Ian Sutherland and spell Ian the right way and spell Sutherland the famous way, and it'll show up.
Perfect. I'll put some links out on the show notes so that if people want to get a hold of you, then they can do that or check out your
and I'm happy to I'd be happy to dig into, like, I've done a handful of custom orders for friends and for some strangers. If anybody wants to hit me up, I'm like, hey, I need something that smells like this, I will see if I can do it.
Yeah, you're gonna start working on that plastic controller for me, right? Yeah.
Honestly, I'm curious about how to pull that off. So
there's a way, right?
I'll let you know. I'll reach out.
All right. You can always get a hold of me through Leah.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome.
Excellent. Leah, do you have anything else?
No, I can hear my child like trying to break the floorboards above me.
Oh no.
Excellent.
It's just Friday night at our house, so
yeah, that's all right. So I think we went to about an hour, so that's kind of what we're looking at whenever we have our show. So again, thanks for joining us, Ian.
Yeah, appreciate making the time.
Thank you, Leah and Brett.
Learning a lot.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to hear it.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll just end the call and end the show. Again, thanks for joining us, and
Thank you.
I look forward to chatting with you more on Twitter. You know, I'm always
Absolutely.
on there, either on as the show or as myself. So
Cool.
you'll
Yeah.
you'll
Give me a
probably
Sometimes
see
follow.
both,
me
you
there.
know, it happens.
All right,
Excellent.
all right. Well, take care. Have a good night, and we'll see
Yeah.
y'all
Thank you.
later.
See you guys.
Likewise to both of you. Bye-bye.
Bye.